You need to put your table lamp on so your face is clear.
So thank you everyone for joining in on time. It's such a beautiful morning. We have Shobhaji with us today. And this is our 98th episode under Trends Literature series. And I'm really very excited that we are going to shortly have our 100th episode as well. And I'm Neeta Aneja, and I'm the founder of Trends Literature series. Our book for today is Parvati the Elephant's Very, Very Important Day by Shobha Tharoor Srinivasan. She's a California-based children's author, poet, editor, and professional voiceover talent. She's also a former nonprofit development professional who spent 2 decades as an advocate and fundraiser for persons with disabilities. She has recorded voice work for documentaries, educational programs, journalistic activities, and audiobooks. In fact, she has published a lot of children's books in India, United States, including A Pie Surprise and Other Stories, the award-winning India Alphabet, How Many Lines in a Limerick, Prince with a Paintbrush, the story of Raja Ravi Varma. Yes, and it's time to rhyme. Shobha, in fact, comes from a very illustrious literary family, and in fact is the sister of former UN Under Secretary General, current Lok Sabha Member of Parliament, and acclaimed author, Mr. Shobha Tharoor. So today we are going to talk about Parvati the Elephant's Very, Very Important Day, which shares a universal story about duty, responsibility, and success. And in the meantime, I request everyone to please switch off your videos. Children, please switch off your videos. Thank you so much. And so welcome, Shobhaji, on our platform. It's such a privilege to have an august author like you. It is amazing for all of us here.
Thank you very much, Neeta. And as I said, once again, apologies if the internet connection leaves us befuddled or shut out.
Don't worry, we'll hope for the best. I think ma'am is going to join back again. Yes, you're fine. You're back now. Hello, Shobhaji. Can you hear us?
As I was saying, I think I'll have to speak really fast and hope that this lasts. But thank you so much for hosting me and giving us an opportunity to share a very, very special book, Parvati the Elephant's Very Important Day. HarperCollins, my publisher, has produced it in the most exquisite fashion. It's a large hardcover book with wonderful illustrations. And since the book is a picture book, and that's what I wanted to say, a picture book is a very particular kind of book in which the text cannot obscure, or rather the text cannot set industry standards. Sometimes a picture book may have only 300 words in it. This book has, at least 400 or 500 words in it. But readers can follow the story with the visual images. And so we have a very, very beautiful, we have a very talented illustrator who's done some very beautiful illustrations in this book. And if you are a non-reader and someone is reading you the story, you can sort of follow along on the pages and the text comes alive. So this is very different from some of the other books that I've worked on and written. It's a conventional picture book. It's a very, very special book. It's been produced in a way that hopefully the book will last in your home, in your library, and everywhere. And it's the story of an elephant. But I'll wait for you to ask another question before I talk on.
So right. The prologue in the book does talk about why you wanted to write this book and why on Parvati. So it'll be really nice to know if you can talk about it and let the viewers know, especially we have a lot of children today who are really excitedly looking forward to hearing from you why this story.
Yeah. Right. Well, first of all, children, I'm going to address you directly. You will be the stewards of it.
Ma'am, there's a Wi-Fi.
I'll begin again. The beloved animal, all over the world, even children in America love to go and see the large so elephants have been beloved. Remember, little children used to do the march, so the elephant, my children who were born in California used to love to come to India and be able to see the elephants in the wild. If you were in Kerala, for instance, the elephants would be crossing the street like you see cows crossing the street sometimes in North India. So, elephant has been very much a part of our consciousness. It's an animal that I thought would be the right animal to share this story. And I've anthropomorphized the animal, which means I've given the animal, Parvati, human impulses. And that's a wonderful way for us as readers to make a connection with an animal. Parvati feels excited. Parvati is nervous. Parvati is feeling successful. Parvati is looking forward to something. She's happy about the kind of food she might get. She jumps to bed the way a child jumps out of bed, maybe the first day of vacation or the first day of school, because they're going to a new class. They want to know, who am I going to meet today? Which new friends will I make? Who's going to be my new teacher? So, that sort of human impulse of excitement, energy, all of that is manifest as in an animal protagonist of the novel. The children make that wonderful connection, and that's very, very special. And it is true that in both Asia now, there are only about 35,000 elephants in the wild. Now, that is really, really sad, because 35,000 is a number that we can all come to terms with. And it really means that the numbers are dwindling. It could be that in the next 20, 30, 40 years, if nobody takes care of animals in the wild, we would lose these animals. So that would be really, really sad. Which is another reason why I wanted to call this Elephant to Your Consciousness, is to say that if you form an affection with an animal, when you grow up, you're going to ask the questions. You're going to make that effort to say that, why do we need to do this? Or why do we need to do that? Why can't we protect them in their natural habitat, etc.? The more we are connected to something or a person, the more we have a sense of responsibility toward it. So those were all the reasons that sort of motivated me. An elephant in wildlife is, part of the ecological system. It really makes a difference to the wildlife habitat by clearing pathways for smaller animals. It helps by digging watering holes. It creates water during drought for other animals who can't do it. So there are many, many ways that the usefulness is there as well. In addition, an elephant is, if you think of an elephant herd, it is almost like a joint family in India. It is a very, very family-oriented animal group. If something happens to the mother elephant and she's injured, some other elephant will take care of the child. So there is that sense of responsibility. There is that sense of, being a dadi or a mami or a, mama or a whatever. In that whole confine of the herd, there is that give and take and share and mutual responsibility for each member, which is very, very special. Even as recently as a week ago, I read an article in, I think it was the Hindustan Times, about an elephant whose calf had died. And the mother elephant was still carrying that child. The grief that the elephant felt was the same as a mother would feel if something happened to her child. So, we need to recognize that there is so much to share and so many commonalities between animals and people. And so anthropomorphizing an animal and sharing the story, which is like an adventure story that could have happened to a child, I have made it happen to an elephant. Now, when you talk about why did I use the term Parvati, and Neeta, I don't want to just talk through, but I am doing it because we lose connection. I want to say again, something is going. Look at this. Hello.
Hi, yes. Yeah.
I'm so very sorry, Neeta. I'm going to speak as fast as I can, so you feel like we had an opportunity to connect. I'm getting all these messages. I think the hotel Wi-Fi definitely is.
Don't worry, we'll carry on the chat. You're talking so well.
In South India.
Yes.
Hello?
Hi, yes. Ma'am, your voice is cracking, but it's okay. Please. Yes, ma'am.
So the problem is, as I said, the Wi-Fi in the hotel. Parvati the Elephant is set in Kerala. It's in a temple in Kerala. That's where the incident is happening. And what is interesting is that the elephants are on the state emblem of Kerala. Elephants are part of every festival tradition in Kerala, not just temple traditions. They use elephants in mosque festivals. Elephants are used in church festivals. So used for any time you want some really dramatic, beautiful festivity, this grand, wonderful elephant is brought into that scenario. And I've described the beautiful caparison, all the different elements. And if you read the book, you will discover at least 10 to 12 words that are from the entire Kerala lexicon, where you will have a glossary. You can learn Malayalam words at the end of the book as well, and be introduced to new instrumentation, to new pageantry, to new costume. So I use the word Parvati because the Puram festival that I talk about, it's not just the Trishur Puram, which is like our big Kumbh Mela that happened already in May, but there are many Purams. Puram is essentially a temple festival, and it happens in many parts of Kerala. And in the Puram festival, the one thing in common is that it's the female goddess that is worshipped. And so I was excited to sort of introduce a female elephant here. And so I picked a name, Parvati. I mean, when you think of female goddesses, Parvati there is a little bit of a conflation there, but it wasn't deliberately for that. I also like the rhythmic 3-syllabic sound of Parvati. It's 3 syllables. It works well with the musicality of my poetry. It is the name that is easy to say, and yet it is musical to hear. So it was very important for me as a voice talent as well. Whenever I write anything, I read it aloud, I perform it, I share it, and I'd be happy to read a couple of pages if the connection is clear enough. But Parvati was brought in, yes, it segues with the female goddess, but also because of the 3 syllables. And I brought in a female elephant, even though most often in these Puram festivals, it is the Asian tusker, the male elephant, that is given the privilege of carrying the Tidamba with the goddess deity on top. I said, well, we can break gender rules. A female elephant is as capable of carrying the goddess as any other elephant. And so that was my literary, I guess, control, what they call literally license. That's what it's called. I had the license to do as I pleased, and I brought in Parvati. So, I want us to feel like, anything can be done by anybody. Children, girls and boys can do similar roles. We can take similar responsibilities. And similarly, Parvati is the one who, if you read the story, you will see that you're going to see how successful she is and what she's told to do. So it's a very, very positive success affirming story. And it's very special in that regard.
Thank you. Thank you so much for describing the book so well. And definitely a story to remind us of the beauty and majesty of the elephants and their value to the world. Some of you have been asking, where can we find this book? You can obviously order it on the Amazon, and the link is also there in the chat box. We are having a little bit of a Wi-Fi issue. As you know, sometimes it happens on Wi-Fi. So bear with us. Ma'am is really talking so well on her book, and you need to really listen to this. Your book is really marked by the beautiful illustrations, and I must really commend Tanya Vyas for really beautifully doing it. So how did the process happen? I mean, did she have free hand, or were you also instrumental in getting those beautiful illustrations done the way you wanted?
So, Neeta, what I wanted to say is that in most cases in a picture book, it is the publisher who picks the illustrator. And if it's a large publisher, sometimes they have an in-house illustrator. Very often they will sign a contract with a well-established illustrator. So since I'm not an illustrator of my books, it was important that we had this book was produced by the right kind of publisher, and HarperCollins has a history of doing the most beautiful picture books. And they had, a relationship and a connection with this exceptional artist, Tanya Vyas, who has really brought the story alive in the illustrations. Yes, of course, there's dialogue between the author and the illustrator, though I don't want to suggest that, I had to really influence a lot of what she did. She understood the poetry. She recognized the importance of her illustrations in the book. We may have had some some conversations about clarity on costume or instrumentation, because those are very specific to Kerala. So I had some opinions on that. But beyond that, Tanya has really has really brought the story alive. And in the instance, for instance, that page where the elephant is smiling while she's pouring water with her trunk, there's a spout of water and she's bathing herself. And when you see that smile, not only does it complement the verse that I have written, but it is also the sort of smile a child would be having when she's looking forward to doing something very special. So I think we really worked well together, in the sense that the illustrator really understood my text and brought it alive in the most beautiful ways. So more power to her, and I hope that I have a chance to work with her again.
No, more power to both of you. It's such a beautiful book. In fact, when I receive the book, I'm sure it's going to be really there in my library. I have a huge library. But this book definitely will stand out because it's so colorful and beautifully done. So would you maybe like to speak now? The Wi-Fi is much, much better. Would you like to speak a few lines from the book? And I'm
Absolutely.
sure all of us will.
So what I'm going to do, Neeta, is I will read the first 2 pages, because I don't want to give away any of the surprises, but it'll give you a sense of how the flow is. Yes. And I should say, though, at this instance, that all of my work, I like to present with a little bit of what I call framing the narrative. And so there's an author's note, and the author's note is then my poetry book. The author's note is then my adult book. Usually when I write something, I bring in an author's note, so that very often the readers are sometimes the older parent or a teacher reading to a child. I want you to understand the purpose behind the book in some ways. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, very well.
Okay, wonderful. So you please feel free to read that on your own when you receive the book. But I will start by reading you the first 2 pages.
Our pleasure, entirely.
Parvati the elephant jumped out of bed one day, remembering with excitement that it was the 1st of May. Another Puram day was here. It was time for temple festivities. There would be hours of celebration and many fun activities. Parvati the elephant had to bathe and plan her dress. She'd have to tidy up her space and make sure there was no mess. So you saw that it's a very simple quatrain with a very simple rhyme scheme, because the purpose is more the narrative and not a complicated rhyme. But the musicality of words really makes it, especially when you're writing for little children, when you have words that rhyme, it's called anaphora if you have repetition. Having Parvati the elephant, it works with children. It's called anaphora when you have repetition, like Dr. Seuss has green eggs and ham. I am, yes, I am. Would you like it? Green, Sam, I am. So that constant sort of repetition brings in a certain, apart from bringing in the musical element to the poem, the repetition resonates with young children who are still learning to read. So writing in rhyme, I think, is a great way to sort of bring people together.
So very right. And I'm sure, you've read your lines so beautifully. I'm sure it'll encourage a lot of children, a lot of adults to definitely look into the book and definitely buy it to read it further. I noticed that whenever you write for children, you always have a learning component in the book as well.
That's right.
So as you say, children definitely learn from their friends, from the playgrounds, from the books. And you definitely, as I read somewhere, and I'm just quoting that, you definitely introduce children to the pleasure of written words. So what message do you normally have for children when they read Parvati, and otherwise also? Because these are beautiful illustrations. Your books always have a meaning, have a message, and you're always encouraging reading, and you've been always talking about it. So we'd like to know more so that it can be a lesson for all of us and for the children today especially.
Absolutely. One of the things I say is, today in this highly visual world and in a world where there are so many distractions, children are interested in video games, children are interested in anime, children are interested in, comic books. Sometimes they don't want to read. And so keeping the reading, I think the responsibility any children's author has is to present work that is that even if it's not a visually appealing book, supposing I've written a collection of short stories, mixing things up so that the interest of the child is always in the text. And we can do that in a number of ways. Writing in poetry where there's the musicality, that's great. Sometimes having pictures like you have in a picture book, that's another way of keeping children engaged. In the storybook that I will be publishing towards the end of the year, I have 12 stories, but each one is written in different ways. So, you have a first person narrative, you have, a collection of 100-word stories, you have stories from different parts of the world. There will always be a common theme when you're bringing a book together. But by doing that, there is something that children see in themselves as well in the book. And that keeps them engaged. In The Prince with a Paintbrush, which is the story of Raja Ravi Verma, which is an illustrated biography, but it's not a picture book the way Parvati is. What was interesting is I framed the story from an 8-year-old child's perspective. So when you have a child inquiring about the author, commenting on certain aspects of life in the 19th century, saying, oh my gosh, this person got married at 18 and the wife was 12 years old and I'm 8 years old. I don't want to get married in 4 years. You see, children get excited. I've had so many, that book was voted by children as the best book of the year by an organization because they read many children's stories and they said this one they loved the most. And that's a very special honor for a writer because your writing is for children after all and for a children's author. So I want to take all children seriously. I believe that they are curious. I believe they are excited about reading. I believe they are interested in reading. As a parent, my only advice is let children read whatever it is they want to read. If they're starting with a comic book, that's fine because it has text in it. Children can read, anime, which is fascination, fantasy and all of that. But, it's set in Japan in another culture. There's a lot of, whatever implements and fighting and adventure of a different kind. That's fine too, because if your child is picking up and asking, Mom, I want to go to the library and get a new book. Mom, I want to buy a new book. That is exciting. That means that the child wants to discover from the world of literature. And we need to be able to encourage that all the time. If somebody is totally against reading, I say do things in a small way, start by encouraging them to play with words, sit down and do word exercises that are fun, maybe write a Mad Libs. I don't know if you know if Mad Libs is available in India, but it's basically it's a template where you have, empty spaces in a story and you play it in a group and you ask children, okay, name a verb or tell me an adjective or give me an animal name or a fruit name. And then you start putting it into the book and into this page of a story that is that is incomplete. And once you get all the words together, you read aloud the story and it's hilarious because it might say, pineapple went for a walk one day and fell down when the chair broke and the elephant came. And, so it becomes like a real jumbled, hilarious story. And it really is very, very exciting. So, there's a way for children to say, my gosh, that was fun. I like the idea of listening to stories or reading stories. And then as an adult, you can say, well, there's all these wonderful things out there for you to read. So children can start with short stories. They don't have to read a big book, a novel. So there are many ways to encourage children. And then for those children who always come to me and say, I'm writing, I love to write, I always tell them that's great. The more you read, the more ideas will come to your head. So read, and then you will be able to write more. I always, try to say this Maya Angelou quote, essentially that, creativity is ever flowing. It never goes away. The more you tap into your creativity, the more it will come. It's like a little Akshay Patra, which a lot of Indian children know that story. It is something that keeps giving. So the more you tap into your creativity, the more there is an opportunity to give. and the more there is to create. So
How
so
wonderful.
keep doing that. It's wonderful. I would really like you to write and read, and I encourage everybody to be a poet or a writer or an artist.
Lovely, lovely. Such important tips, and especially coming from you, it is going to really make a lot of difference in a lot of people's lives. Before I move on to my interactive round, I have some children who've been wanting to ask you questions directly. I have two important last questions. It was really heartwarming to see the other day Mr. Shashi Tharoor launching your book. And so how did you feel, and what influences his writing, you say, perhaps you have on your writing? Though I know Shashiji is known to have some very extraordinary vocabulary.
So, in all fairness to my brother, one thing I need to say is, yes, his vocabulary is extraordinary because he reads and he writes and he knows how to use those words. But what's important is that he is not, the whole purpose of using words is to communicate.
Yes.
And my brother, when he uses a word, right now he's become the dictionary of India in some ways. So he has these words that people are looking up, but his goal is to make sure that what he says is understood by people. So, never think that he's just putting a word out there to confuse anybody. That's not the purpose. Because of his words, if you learn a new word, that's great. And in terms of inspiration, absolutely. When we were growing up, it is true. My brother was very exceptional. He was publishing at a very young age. He had a novel that was published when he was 10 years old, and it was in a magazine, one chapter at a time. I think he was in the Free Press Journal. So, we always looked up to him as an exceptional reader, writer, and all of that. But he was encouraging of all of us. I do say, though, that he always says, challenge yourself. And so that, was part of my sort of family DNA. I remember when I was a little child, somebody asked me, oh, did you like that? And I said, it was nice. And Shashi said to me, nice is such a simple word. Can you not think of a better adjective to describe what you're talking about? So, that challenge, you wanted a Shashi story. So I'm just telling you that it is true. And I still remember him saying that, nice is like what they call damning with faint praise, which means it's a word that says something, but it doesn't say enough. So even as a parent, even when I interacted with children and my own children, maybe when they are hearing it, they get irritated when you tell them, okay, don't say nice, explain it to me in using a different word. They may be annoyed when you hear it first, but I believe me, it's something that they will be grateful for later. And then they're going to say, my mother always told me that there are different ways of saying this. Let me not be satisfied with just a simple sentence. Why can't I use the toolbox that I have within me? See, we all have a toolbox within us. Very easily, it's easy to be lazy and just write anything or say anything. If you make it a point to speak clearly, to make it a point to express clearly, to use what is already there. It's not that you have to go to a dictionary and use the word in an incorrect manner. There are many people who just throw in big words into a sentence and they haven't even understood what the word is. And so the sentence doesn't make any sense. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to communicate, to be an effective communicator. But use your toolbox that you already have and find the best, shiniest tool to use. So that's what I want to say.
So very well said. We are all big fans of his and yours too. I mean, we've grown up with his books. Among all the books that you've written, which book is closest to you? I know you've written a recent book on your mother recently. It's Good Innings, The Extraordinary Ordinary Life of Lily Tharoor. It is unusual and it has been a fascinating life, part memoir and it's a part self-help book. So what made you write a tribute to her extraordinary life?
So first of all, a lot of biographies are written after the person is no longer with them. And that wasn't the purpose of this book. It isn't a book I wrote and then sold to a publisher. It was a book that the publisher was very interested, but they wanted a conventional biography on my mother. They knew that I was a writer that, wrote certain kinds of books, and they thought that, I would be willing to write a biography of my mother. And I said, first of all, my mother is not interested in her story being told. Second of all, that's not something I want to do. But they were very, very interested in this book being written and kept in touch for a very long time. That made me think a little bit and locked out of social connections. It was in many ways a time of isolation for a lot of people. And it is in telling stories and hearing stories that we were able to make those going out and it is in hearing these, in listening to or being made. So I did think that, the extraordinary story of my mother is that she was and went off to London straight from a village almost, and then lived in the biggest cities of India and lived a very high profile life because of my father's job, learned English by listening to the radio in London. These are all pretty extraordinary stories. And by sharing those stories, people who know Lily, of course, will enjoy seeing, oh, I remember that stage, I remember that stage. But the book is not written only for people who know Lily. The book is written for people all over India who feel like, first of all, they have mothers who have lived extraordinary lives. Every mother has a story to tell. Women hold up half the sky, and I genuinely believe that. And so all our mothers are exceptional in different ways. Women are exceptional in different ways because they have to multitask, they have to do so many jobs all at the same time. And so my mother is an example of them. And when you read these stories, I'm hoping that it's a springboard for conversations with your mother or with your daughter or with other women in your life. And so the purpose was to make that human connection. And I genuinely believe that that's what it does. I have to say with a lot of pride that the book just came out on May 8th on Mother's Day, and within a week it was already out of print. It's gone into second print. So, these are books. Same thing with my poetry book, was released in April. It's already in a second printing. And I'm hoping Parvati, which was just released on the 30th, people will pick up and read, because that is the purpose. I want all of you to get something out of it. It's not, once the author has written and has put the book into the world, the book is no longer the author's on some level. Yes, it's mine, but it's what you bring to that reading. It is the stories you share after you read my book. It is what you do in terms of your writing. It is the art that you make after you read it, or the poetry that you write. That is the success of the book. So I really want to, I give this to you as a gift, my readers. I hope that you will take with it and soar and fly and create and do wonderful things. This is a very special book, so I really do hope that all of you will read it.
The link is already there in the chat box, and I'm sure, and you can definitely order from there. And there are in fact 2 giveaways also in this session. So once you comment on the video after the session is over about your comments on the book and the conversation, we will select 2 of you. Thank you. Lucky winners. So I'll start with the interactive round. I hope we are able to get these children to switch on their video, whosoever we announce the name. So we have Krishna Arora. He's from Manaskriti School, and he wants to ask you a question. Yes, Krishna.
Hello, Shiv.
Yes. Yes, please, Krishna.
Shiv, what is your question?
My question is that whenever I read any book, I read sometimes sitting upside down or while like in the sleeping position. My mom keeps this, my mom keeps saying that I read in the wrong position. What is the position that you suggest for me to read?
If the connection is really bad, I couldn't understand your question, but it's lovely to see your face. You said something about the pictures of an elephant in how to fill a story with fun. Is that your question?
No, my question is that my mom keeps saying that I read in the wrong position, like in the sleeping position, upside down, or sitting on the sofa like that. What is the position that you suggest for me to read?
He wants to know what is the right position to read the book. And his other question was why this name for the elephant?
I love that. Okay. That's lovely. That's a great question. All parents are telling their children, oh, and I don't know how much of it is scientific or not, but we're always telling our children, please make sure there's enough light. Please make sure you're sitting down and reading. Please don't, make sure that you're not just lying down and reading a book. Is that what
Yes,
the
yes,
question is?
yes, my mom keeps saying, so I'm asking you that what is the correct.
Well, I'll tell you something, Krish. I will tell your mother that, if you are enjoying your books in a lying down position, that's fine. I personally like to sit and read my books. I can't lie down and read. I don't know why, but I have lie down and read. Only when I go to bed, I want to lie down. They're called idiosyncrasies. And if you are my perspective, however, you could try changing up your position and see if you enjoy the book a little bit more.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Krishan.
I have another question, that what inspires you for writing the books?
What inspires you to write the book?
What inspires me? I'll tell you. It's children, it's questions that are asked. It's my interactions with people. It's everything around me. Sometimes it's an incident I've read about. Sometimes it's a conversation I've had. So there are many, many, many informing sort of sources for creativity. In your case, it could be an interaction you've had with somebody in school, or a story you've heard from someone else that you want to take that story and turn it on its head and write something different. Sometimes it's a book we've read and we feel, as once an author was asked, what inspired you to write? And they say, when I find when I don't get my question answered in a book, then I want to write it myself. So that's some people's stories about elephants. I read a very sad story and I thought, you know what, it's important for me to share a story about a positive story about elephants, and I used the elephant for various reasons in this story.
Thank you. Thank you, Krishan. Next we have Dishan. He's from grade 3. Dishan, please. Yes, Dishan, hi. One question, please. He's again from Manuskriti. We have a lot of children from Manuskriti, Cambridge, School of International Education, DPS. Thank you, all the children, for participating.
Good morning, ma'am. My question is, why illustration is important to create a story? How can we create illustration?
So, obviously, somebody who's doing an illustration for a book that's going to be published is someone who has been working and building her craft or his craft for a very long time. How can you create illustrations? You will have to start by doing, if you want to become an illustrator of a children's book, you may want to start, drawing and painting starting as a child and then building that up. These days, there are also graphic tools, software that will help you create art. So, I'm not an artist of that sort to be able to really direct you into how to become an artist. But if it is something that you know, that, when you read stories, it'll be a springboard for you to make your own drawings.
Great. Thank you, Dishan. Next,
I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dishan. Next, we have Etna. She's a class 4 student.
Hello.
Namaskar, ma'am.
Hello, good morning.
Do you always write motivational stories? Please suggest to me one of your book to start with.
You want me to recommend one of your books?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, she wants a recommendation and any of the motivational stories that you've written.
What you should do is get your parent to read descriptions of all the books I've written, searching for them online, and then or on my website to read first. That's the one you should pick up and read. And then you can move. And if you like my style and the way I write, you can always get another one, right? So I don't want to impose a book on you. If you feel like Parvati is the first book you want to read, you should read that. Otherwise, you can. Do I always write motivational stories? Oh, that's a good question. So you know what? I think children have told me when I've interacted with them a lot with better internet connection as well. I'm sorry about that. And they've always told me that they really like that when they read a book of mine, in addition to the fun aspect of the book, they always feel like they've learned something new. And so the learning something new is what I consider the motivational element. Whether you've learned a new word, or you've learned a new concept, or you've learned about a new instrument, or you've learned something that you didn't know about a place, or you've learned something that you didn't know about poetry, they're all motivational aspects to learning in some ways. A motivation doesn't necessarily have to be a moral, like in a Panchatantra story. The motivation, yes, I think there is an instructional element in my books, but I don't want to call it just instructional because that's a word that some children don't like to hear. The book is entertaining, it's engaging, it'll be fun, but I can guarantee you that if any book of mine you read, you will learn something new. So yes, the motivational aspect is there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Edna. Thank you for a wonderful question. Please switch off your video. We have Anika. She wants to ask you a question. Again from, yes. Ayansh is also there. So one by one you can ask. Ayansh, you go ahead with your question. Then we'll come to Anika and Anek.
Ma'am, my question is how to story can be filled with fun.
How can stories be filled with fun? You need to read some of them and discover it. You've got to think about what is fun for you, and then that is the kind of fun that you can put into your story. So if you're sitting at home writing stories, how do you fill them with fun? Think about what is it that makes it fun for you, and go ahead and put in that fun element into your story. So obviously my stories are about the kind of fun that I think you might enjoy. Many children like surprises, they like adventures, they like to learn something new, or they like musical aspects to it. So my stories are all that kind of fun. But you have to decide as the creator what is fun.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ayansh. We have Anika and Ane. They're together and they want to ask you a question. So I think, yes, please.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Nice to meet you.
Good morning.
Please,
Good afternoon.
can you share the incident of your life inspired you to become an author?
That's a good question. Well, I loved words. I always loved words. I've done a little show in America where I talk about the importance of words. I worked in the disability arena where I was using words to bring funders to initiatives and projects. As a voiceover talent, I'm using words to draw people in as well. So words are something I've always enjoyed. There's a delightful little limerick that I've used in my book that talks about the importance of words as well. So I personally, I'm driven by the English language. I like to read, I like to write. So those are all inspirations in themselves. Then, of course, being a mother, making up stories for my children and then, reciting, reading to them. I'm now a grandmother, so I read stories to my grandchildren. I'm surrounded by stories, their stories, the incidents of the day, and that is what inspired me to write.
Thank you, Anika. And we have a very, very special guest, Preeta Thakur. She's going to ask you a question. So one adult person, and she's a friend of yours, and she's a very renowned theatre personality. Preeta, please switch on. Please give us the privilege to switch on your video. Okay. Preeta, Will
I
you be
think
switching?
she might be facing some net. Oh, she's
No, she's there. Hi,
I can't see anybody.
Preeta. You can see her?
No.
Okay. Preeta, go ahead. I think she's unable to see you.
Okay, Shobha, hi, remember me?
Oh my gosh, I do remember you. Preeta is a very close
That's why I said
friend of
very
my
special
sister's.
guest.
Very nice to meet you, Preeta. Preeta is an actress or an actor and a theatre personality in Mumbai, and she's a very close friend of my sister's. They went to college together. Of course, I know you. Hi.
Here you were going to be on this show, and I wanted to know, Shobha, can you write a play for us? We're into doing plays for children now. Can you imagine? I'm working with children, and
Wonderful.
I never thought I would do that, but I'm doing it now. And you have to write a nice play for us.
Well, you know what I should
Forward.
tell you, Preeta, I want to tell you this. First of all, I thank you. I'll keep that in mind. I'll definitely, if I write a play, you will be the first to hear of it. But what's interesting is one of my stories that is going to, you know, it's a story was performed by Silicon Valley Shakespeare just last August. So what they did is they hired a theater personality who did a dramatic performance of a story I had written. And it was called Silicon Valley Shakespeare Festival did something called Stories from the World. And my story was the Indian story. And it was a dramatic performance of a story I had written. So Preeta, definitely what you can do is, I mean, I'm going to have a collection of stories coming out. And in fact, the story that was performed in California is going to be included in that book. So when that book comes out, it's going to be called Timeless Tales, unless the publisher changes the title, which I don't think they will. When that comes out, please look for some of the stories in there. You can certainly do some exercises with children from some of my stories. So we don't necessarily need a conventional play format. Many of the stories are capable of sort of dramatic renderings. But it's really lovely to have seen you. I don't know any, but I will text my sister and tell her, guess who showed up. It was wonderful.
Yeah, and the other thing I just wanted to ask you, Shobha, if you don't mind, what would you suggest for children? You know, I have some children who are writing short stories. So what would you suggest for them, the one or two few important things they should keep in mind?
First of all, I always say, please keep reading the kind of stories you want to write. Because that a book is published is an example of something successful. No publishers, unless it's self-published, published books are something that the author believes in and publishes, which is not necessarily about. There are some limitations, but if you have a well-known publisher publishing a book, they genuinely believe it's a book that will resonate with children. So going out and reading those books will give you a sense of what is
Ma'am, we are unable to hear you. I think there is a major
connection. There's a bit of a problem with the connection.
Actually, she's in Chennai. The hotel has a bit of an issue. I think she'll join us back. Yes, she's there. Can you please unmute yourself, Shobha?
Did you miss that? Did you miss it all completely?
Yes. Yes, the last part we missed. Is Shobha.
Okay. Do you want me to repeat myself? A couple of things. One is that you should read books that are out, published a book because they believe that either the subject or the concept or the language or story is something that will resonate with children. Of course, if you genuinely believe in what it is that you want to say, then you can say it. So, I mean, I'm not going to tell you, you know, try to write a formula book. It's nothing to do with formulas. It has to be sincere. It has to be honest. It needs to come from within yourself. Observations in your
to reconnect.
For children. So I would stories. If you see some either a person or an object or a place, found it exciting, it's likely that somebody write it down so you don't forget it, and then weave that into your story. Those are, being open, having, what there was a definition of poetry by world in a grain of sand. So have your eyes open to be able to look around and notice things that are languages, a habit that somebody has, all of that be for a child to discover in a story, and it's unique. So what appeals to you is likely to appeal to you. I hope I answered that correction. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Yes, Shobha.
Okay, great. Sorry, I can't see you. The connection is so bad. I'm sitting in a hotel in Chennai and we have very poor internet. But I did like your question. I'm excited that you're doing something with children. Children, as I say, are our future sort of stewards of the planet. They are the ones, what children read today will inform the kind of adults they're going to be tomorrow. So we all have that responsibility. I think it's great that we're working with kids. And I think it's great that Neeta has this Trends Literature series. She's bringing to the on a regular basis. So I commend all of these literature.
Ma'am, you
kids should be very happy. Hello?
Hi, yes. No. Hi, Shobha. We lost you in the last part, actually. But are you able to hear us? Hello.
I'm able to hear you and I can see you. But as I said, it was a pleasure to meet all of you. Thank you for this opportunity to share my books with you. Go out and read what you like. Keep creating. Creativity flows on the more you tap into it. Congratulations to Preeta, who's working with children in theatre, to Neeta, who is doing something so special, giving children an opportunity to discuss with authors. Good luck with everything.
Ma'am, I like everyone to switch on.
I think it's probably best that we all sign out now because, okay.
Everyone, I request to switch on their videos. We'll take a picture. And there are two children who wanted to ask you a question, but I think because of the Wi-Fi, we are unable to take any further questions. Simriti and Sanvi from Delhi Public School, if you can put in your question in the chat box, we'll take it up with Shobha later and let you know. Yeah, can you take pictures? Yes, please, everyone, switch on their videos. Very nice. Hi.
Did you get your picture? There you are.
This is the book spoken about today. Thank you everyone. Thank you all the children.
Thank you
all our readers and all the children from Manaskriti, Delhi Public School, Cambridge. And any other questions you have, please send it to us. We'll get the answers from Shobha. Wi-Fi is an issue today, but we had a wonderful session, Shobha, and thank you for giving us time from your really busy schedule. I know you've been really busy with all the book signings and all the interactions.
Yes, I've had the good fortune of, I've had the blessing of 3 book releases and a 2-month, so it's really been busy, but I've enjoyed my interaction and good luck to all of you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Yes.